We see 3 of those in a lot of players' deck lists, and they're going to be important in a matchup like this as Riley Hicks playing those Edge Wall Innkeepers in this Team Adventures deck. And there's the hazard in hand. I mean, on the draw with the Scryland, I like giving this a think, but it's a close one.
I guess so.
I don't know. I like keeping hands. This is a thing that I like to do. I mean, Hicks likely has played a lot of matches with this archetype at this point. When I first pick up a deck, I like to stress test keeping as many hands as possible. I would like to keep the widest possible range in practice.
Yeah, but you do that in the leagues and you do that on the ladder. You don't do that when we're playing for the big dollars. You know, we make the safe play unless we're in a spot where we cannot afford to make the safe play. On the draw, keeping a one-lander in a deck where you have a bunch of mana, like your whole deck just wants mana. I would rather mulligan to a 6-lander.
Well, that's just what I'm saying. If Hicks has tested this a lot, they're going to know if that's the kind of hand you can keep or not, and the decision ends up being a mulligan.
That's fair. That is a cool-looking Omnath that is completely white text that you can't read.
We have those kind of different borders. I'm not sure what to call these, the Zendikar Rising alternate frame cards, but I think all the landfall cards have this kind of border treatment on them.
Mm-hmm. They look cool. I like the kind of extended art looking stuff. I just give me a red text or something. I just want to be able to read it.
Players trading landfalls to start. Ichikawa with the first action. It's the front side of an Uro. No land to go with it. And a Confounding Conundrum picked up off the top. That's the mirror technology there.
Yeah. One kind of awkward thing that's important to note is that cards like Uro and Growth Spiral before it don't give you an extra land drop for the turn. Instead, they just allow you to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. It actually works very counterintuitively with cards like Spikefield Hazard and the other modal dual-face cards that count as lands.
Yeah, there's some funny things that happen there. You can't put a modal DFC in with Uro, and if you have a pathway in an Uro, if you put that pathway in, you can only put the front side on. You can't choose the back side.
Really? I did not realize that. That's wild.
Yeah, it's the same reason you can't put the back side of Spikefield Hazard there. It's just not treated as the card in your hand.
Oh, that makes sense. I wish it did not work like that, but that's,
I feel ya. I feel ya. Here is the conundrum. Ichikawa does make land number 4 on this turn, but pretty slow going.
Maybe they should have made all of the dual face cards be the land on the front.
I'm sure that they had a long conversation about that. There's things that move in both directions.
Sure. Specifically, that would solve the issue that we're talking about now, but also it would solve the issue with like Balustrade Spy and Goblin Charbelcher that we've been seeing. Like, I don't think that part was intentional, but I mean, if it was, then I would blame probably Zach Elsick for it, because that dude loves some combo decks.
I'm sure there's just better things to do, but just off the top of my head, Life from the Loam picking up 3 spells is kind of nonsense.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that'll do. That's enough. Done with this conversation.
We see Granted for a face-up Mystical Dispute for Hicks there.
Yeah, Ichikawa playing 4 copies of Confounding Conundrum, perhaps stifling development here a little bit, but
yeah, Omnath, let's just go. Ichikawa says, yeah, I see your dispute. I'm going to cast this spell. And Omnath meets the dispute, and that's going to clear the way for some of these Escape the Wilds later, I believe is the plan.
Does Escape the Wilds... Escape the Wilds allows for extra land drops, right? So, like, can you play a tapped Spikefield Hazard off the back of it?
Yeah, that one's just play an extra land.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Here's another Granted. Hicks welcome the sideboard. Nice little 15 one-ofs wish board here.
Nice. You love to see it. There's nothing I like more in Magic than having a deck where you don't have to sideboard. It's been such a dream playing that mono green like Planeswalker deck and Pioneer and stuff, and even the one that's been getting into Historic a little bit. It's been incredible.
It is honestly so delightful. I love that deck. And it's not generally in my wheelhouse, but just the no sideboarding thing is so nice.
Mm-hmm. It looks like a couple lands came off the Escape to the Wild, so maybe you can play a 2-drop spell here, but I don't think there's one that they want to play other than that Lotus Cobra. It might be worth waiting till next turn to play it. But like Forest and Pathway plus Lotus Cobra here sounds pretty sweet.
Escape finds Lotus Cobra, Forest, Branch Loft, Pathway. Couple confounding conundrums. Ichikawa is actually going to use that Spike Loft Hazard, play that as a land.
I think it's mostly to set up Genesis Ultimatum because Forest and the Branch Loft Pathway, it's actually a little awkward for Genesis Ultimatum. I believe Branch Loft Pathway is the green and white one.
That tracks. All right, now the escape that Hicks wished for was granted. So we have Dueling Escape to the Wilds. Going to see a bunch of lands, a Balaged Recovery hit off of the escape here. That can be used.
Sorry.
That's going to be used to pick up the escape. What were you saying?
I was going to say, I saw Willie Edel, someone who I very much respect, suggested that Escape to the Wild should be banned. Was that remotely on your radar, or should it be on my radar?
So it's important to provide some context on this because it was part of a thread that called out, I think, 5 or 6 total cards.
Sure.
So the idea wasn't specifically Escape to the Wilds is a problem. It was, I think, if we start banning and we have a vision for what the format we want is, and this is something I don't know if Adel's necessarily on the same page, but I know that Reed Duke made a tweet that was like, I like it when a format involves blocking and blocking matters. And I think that there's kind of some similar notions being passed around here where you want to ban enough cards so we can play the kind of Magic that people enjoy. And then Escape is just kind of pushing you in that ramp direction. It might become more of a problem as the format scales back some.
Sure. Yeah, like Escape to the Wild's kind of naturally ramping into Ugin seems kind of wicked, right? Because it just allows you for the extra land drop, and then like you're probably gonna find it, like, you know. And Ugin just kind of dumpsters any deck that's trying to attack and play fair, trying to hit the battlefield running, you know.
All right, we're gonna see some of these conundrums that Ichikawa hit off Escape to the Wilds cast. They do replace themselves, so multiple copies. Actually, some funny effects here. We saw Hicks play an extra land off of Escape that triggered the first confounded conundrum. That sort of thing gets a lot worse now that Ichikawa has 3.
Sure. Yeah, no, now, like, before it was Beanstalk Giant, like, pick up Spikefield Hazard or whatever, like, pick up Balaged Recovery, I think, was actually the play. So he actually was able to turn the conundrum into, like, a pseudo helpful spell. But the third, not the second one, but the third conundrum makes any sort of ramp just completely detrimental in like the worst possible way.
Yeah, the extra land drop really set you back at this point. So we'll see what Hicks wants to do about it. Now the grip getting a little bit fleshed out. We see one of the main deck Mystical Disputes in hand. That one might be tough to execute at this stage in the game with an opponent controlling about 10 lands. But this Edgewall Innkeeper is going to start drawing some cards. Bone Crusher Giant going to bring the first one.
Oh, wow, that's kind of cool. Something I never noticed before. When the Bone Crusher Giant hit the battlefield, it did like an animation, right? But if you look closely, there's like a big shadow on the screen as you're casting it, and the shadow is in the shape of Bone Crusher Giant. Next time it's cast, keep an eye out for it. I've never seen that shadow before. It was really sweet.
I've cast a lot of Bone Crusher Giants, but yeah, that is a cool one. All right, here's Omnath. Not quite in dispute range. That one's going to be good. Here's Lotus Cobra.
Why does Omnath say draw a card when it enters the battlefield?
Oh, you know, it's difficult to... I was gonna like go down some line there, but I just don't know. It's weirdly pushed.
It's just like extremely.
How else are you gonna get people to play your 4-color cards? But I feel like there's plenty of value on this card otherwise.
Yeah. I feel like maybe a little bit.
All right, so you have Omnath, get the Cobra, escape to the wilds. Hicks could not dispute that because they only have 2 untapped lands. That means that the Cobra and the Omnath are going to go to work. You see another land. You see 5 mana in the pool. Some cards on deck here from Escape to the Wilds, an Uro, a Cultivate, Spikefield Hazard, and Felidar Retreat. And that retreat is going to be pretty good because Ichikawa is the player with 3 copies of Confounding Conundrum. No such luck for Riley Hicks, or rather, that's not the game plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ichikawa just came super prepared for the mirror, and I think that was a really smart deck building decision from playing 4 copies of Conundrum. I mean, worst case scenario, just cycles kind of helps do the thing where I was talking about earlier about keeping velocity. Unlike a lot of hate cards, Confounding Conundrum cycling makes it a very easy main deck card.
And the thing about it is that I tend to value 2 mana cards that are somewhat situational and replace themselves lower than other players. Because the thing about it is 2 mana can often be a lot of mana. That's just not true. If you look at the rest of this deck, you have Lotus Cobra, you have Uro, you have Escapes the Wilds, Omnath, just a ton of ways to make up the extra mana, at which point anything that cantrips is a pretty serious consideration.
Right. No, for sure. It's always good to have your stepping stone spells say draw a card on them, because then they help find the more important stuff. But that's also why designing cards a lot of the time that say draw a card on them and making too many of them can lead to like dangerous design space. It's like a slippery slope, because when every single card replaces itself, there's never any threat to running out of resources. And that's what you're seeing in a lot of these ramp mirrors. You just see both players casting Haymaker after Haymaker after Haymaker, and every single card replaces itself and draws more cards. So the games will eventually come to a conclusion, but it's rarely a satisfying conclusion because neither player was really struggling and one person just happened to do slightly more ridiculous stuff than the other.
Hicks is going to try to claw back into it. You see an Escape to the Wilds. Bunch of spells hit off that. We see a Heart's Desire. A lot of creatures on adventures. Then some Lovestruck Beasts and a Beanstalk Giant on the escape cards.
Yeah, this is another one of those, oh, you decided to let your Omnath untap? What are you, like,
let's get Clippy out there.
Shouldn't have done that.
I see you're playing as Omnath. I see your opponent is resolving Genesis Ultimatum.
Now, this really cool here, the second Omnath actually comes in and sees all the lands triggering, so you actually get double Omnath rolls this turn. Even though one of them died, it still saw all the lands coming into play, so you still get the 3 landfall triggers, so you get 6 Omnath triggers from these 3 lands, and 8 mana, 8 damage to the face, 8 life.
Yikes.
It's vomit-inducing. Because it's not... it's not... I'm just gonna let it go. This is fun. Dude, look at this. This is great. Lotus cover trigger. Lotus cover trigger.
Big effect. Trigger. Drawing cards. Making mana.
Oh, Yuki Ichikawa's owning Riley Hicks. Let's go!
Another Escape to the Wild. Let's see if we can get any heat off of this one. We probably can. Another Genesis Ultimatum. All right. Looking at Genesis Ultimatum number 2. Have you ever seen so many Genesis Ultimatums in your life? Kenrith, Returned King. Another Genesis Ultimatum.
Okay. Well, luckily the game's ending this turn. So Felidar Retreat, all these tokens are entering now. They're all going to get buffed. More, Lotus Cobra's making more mana. Kenrith can give them all haste. That's a big deal here.
That card, it has dipped in and out of favor in Standard. It first really started showing up in Fires of Invention, but just any time I see somebody with a Kenrith in their deck list, anytime I see somebody casting a Kenrith, I feel like they're just clowning their opponent. Minor consideration, but easy enough to fit in 1 or 2 in your 4-color ramp decks here.
Yeah, I mean,
some more retreat triggers. Team is looking large.
I feel like this game might be over. Let's see if Yuki Ichikawa can find the line
Yeah.
win the game.
This is a pretty interesting what's the play. Hicks found it, though. The play was to concede. We're going to move to game number 2.
Thank God somebody's got some sense. Holy moly.
We saw the way that the game started out there, and I think this is why you saw so much pause from Hicks on that 7-card hand, the one lander with an innkeeper. It seems really difficult for Hicks to stay in things if the game starts getting to the mid and late game. I think Hicks is really looking to seize early initiative.
What really happened there, though, was just Lotus Cobra didn't die. There's 4 copies of Bone Crusher Giant. There's some Spike-filled hazards, but the Lotus Cobra just survived. And the fact that one person was able to cast Cobra and it went unchecked, as well as had a bunch of the hate cards that made competing ramp-wise impossible. We just saw a complete landslide of a game in the face of a turn 2 Lucky Clover. It just wasn't even remotely close.
Yeah, both players were resolving Escape to the Wilds. It just Hicks had less to do with them.
Right. I mean, that's just Omnath, though, right? Omnath generates so much mana. Genesis Ultimatum with Omnath and Lotus Cobra just generates such a snowball that it's very hard to not win that turn.
Well, if you're looking to sell your standard cards, you get a 30% trade-in bonus at
hell yeah.
SCGgames.com.
You can sell us your Euros right now. Sell them. Get them out your collection. They're not, they're probably not going to be in any format for very long.
Singles, sealed product, bulk, store inventories, large collections, small collections. You got it. We'll buy it. Sell us your Magic cards.
Dude, I love selling Magic cards to Star City Games. Mostly because I get to talk to Steven Green. I'm like, hey, Steven, of Commander Versus fame. I don't know if you've heard about this guy. He's a cool guy. Hey, Steven, I got all these cards. You want to buy them? And he says, yes, give them to me. Except he does it in his redneck voice. Because he's Southern boy, he's like me.
That's the only voice he's got.
Yeah.
There you see
That's it.
Steven Green, the American Dream.
It was not a good story. It was just that's Steven, man. There he is.
Fittingly with the green backdrop there.
Oh yeah.
Watching my Commander Versus every Wednesday at 5 p.m. I don't believe he ever buys Todd's cards on that stream, but he is involved in the process otherwise.
I could probably convince him to as a joke.
Yeah, you should do a guest spot on Commander Versus where you just sell Steven your deck.
Dude, I actually got we did kind of a crossover between regular versus and Commander versus, and I say regular, but there's no other name. It's not Commander versus the other one, right? But we did it first. Anyway, we had Steven Green come on Versus live, and we played pack battles whenever a cool new set would come out. And that was some of the most fun I've had making videos, was just playing games with Steven. So I can only imagine. I'm very jealous that the other Commander Versus folks get to play games with him on a regular basis.
We are underway. It looks like Hicks on a mulligan again. Opens up on a Heart's Desire. This time at least has the Innkeeper in the opener, but it's going to be looking for the third land. Ichikawa makes a couple land drops. Wilt, the only castable spell. Be nice in the face of a Clover, but at least not facing down anything that matters, as Hicks has missed the land drop for now.
Yeah, it's kind of gross. Missing that land drop when you have a Love Strike Beast you can cast and draw a card or more off the Innkeepers. Pretty rough. But Mystical Dispute's still at the ready, so has a little bit of protection. Not out of it yet.
There's Innkeeper number 2. Ichikawa is going to cycle that Wilt. Not worried about a Lucky Clover anymore. Also, kind of needs some help on the hand. Just going to make a land and pass the turn. And Hicks finds land number 3, but it's tapped for now. Catch your Triome there. Ichikawa to 14 off of the attack. He's going to cycle a Triome of his own as we go back Ichikawa's way. Some actions, some options. Land number 4 could be Felidar Retreat. We also might see the front side of an Uro this turn. Just going to be the retreat, though. Trying to catch up on the battlefield. Petty Theft, though.
Yeah, Petty Theft is a nice little reset. But the big story here is Love Strike Beast is going to allow for a draw 2 and create an immense amount of pressure. And if Riley's able to find an untapped blue source to hold up Mystical Dispute, it could be a significant game changer here.
Interesting turn there. You know about the retreat there, and you're attacking with 1/1s, Ichikawa to 11. Hicks actually just sits on the mana. Going to leave up this dispute for the retreat.
I actually love that play. This is a very disciplined play from Riley. Knows that if the Feldar retreat resolves, it's likely going to be a game over. Mystical Dispute here on the Feldar retreat as a hard cast is a little inefficient, but like it just makes sure that the game progresses for a few more turns, which is all he really wants when you have 2 copies of Edgewall Innkeeper in play with multiple cheap creatures already on adventure.
See some pause there. Hicks could have just flashed in the Borrower. Does dispute the retreat. Ichikawa is going to make land number 5 as we go back to Riley Hicks. Team comes in for 3 another time. Ichikawa to 8. We'll see what Hicks wants to do. Really tempting to cast that Lovestruck Beast at this point. Extra land drop could be meaningful in the long game.
For sure. What I think they're maybe considering is double Fae of Wishes. Like if you play the first one and you draw a land, you get to play the second one, and that allows for just a couple extra cards drawn. Lovestruck Beast has more power. I don't think it's that close. I think Lovestruck Beast is a better play, but I think that was the consideration.
Makes sense. Hicks lands on Lovestruck Beast, does find a land. Islands played for turn. We head back to Ichikawa. Now we're going to see that Uro. Ichikawa will go back to 11. Still pretty flush with lands, so some of those are going to go on the battlefield. There's Confounding Conundrum. Hicks has had a Beanstalk Giant in hand for a couple turns and was maybe trying to line up Fertile Footsteps with this Lucky Clover, but the Conundrum's going to push back on that.
One thing I want to note is that this game actually is playing out in a very similar way to how blue cards interact with ramp strategies. We saw Mystical Dispute tag the 1 key spell that Yuki Ichikawa has cast this game, that Feldar Retreat, the 1 payoff. And has, even though it's been a weak amount of pressure with just 2 Edgewall Keepers and a 1/1 off the Lovestruck Beast, we're in a scenario where we just have an immense amount of pressure now because Yuki Ichikawa was just stumbling for so long, just didn't cast anything of consequence, and now the game is very close to over.
Big attack, knocks Ichikawa down to 3. Hicks is going to grant it for Mystical Dispute again. That covers anything like this Genesis Ultimatum where we're at here. Ichikawa knows about that, though, so we're going to see it's like a possible Kenrith, some consideration to how to tap the mana.
He's trying to hold up white for Spikefield Hazard and red for haste. Or something like that. Or maybe just trying to cast Kenrith plus Spikefield Hazard.
There is Kenrith. Yeah, it looks like leaving up red for Spikefield Hazard and then also making this white land drop to potentially gain 5 life. Anyway, here's Kenrith. 3 mana up, we go back to Riley Hicks. Another Fae of Wishes off the top. No mana for it here, but I do really enjoy Embercleave being part of the Granted Wish board in this configuration.
Oh, I would love that. That'd be a cool little 1/2. Need 1 more land, though, I think.
Right.
Now, that Mystical Dispute off of the Fae of Wishes last turn was a safe call. You just want to prevent Genesis Ultimatum from happening. I think that was one of the easiest ways for Raleigh to just lose on the spot last turn. Just a very lucky Genesis Ultimatum.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now we see the Fae itself cast. Hicks is going to draw 2 cards. No land draw for the turn. Lovestruck Beast attacks. That's a 5-ball, but Ichikawa can just gain the 5 off of the Kenrith. You see that. No need to block. Ichikawa would much rather be able to untap and then start doing things like gaining 10 life with the Kenrith and maybe work on escaping this Uro, that sort of stuff. Yeah, so Hicks passes turn, has 3 mana up and a face-up Mystical Dispute. That is what Ichikawa is facing down. There is only 1 basic plains in this deck, so the Fabled Passage does not represent additional white mana if you're interested in gaining a lot of life. Spikefield Hazard is going to be aimed at one of the Innkeepers, Innkeeper down.
Yeah, but the Kenrith here can kind of just float for a few turns, right? Like just one of the triomes does tap for white, and the plane's in play, and 6 mana means that we can just gain 10 life a turn if we want to.
When the passage was the last card for Uro, that's a big deal. That makes me feel a lot better about hanging out and gaining life.
Yeah, you get to play around Mystical Dispute as well, where if it's cast, you can just pay, and if it's not cast, you just gain 5 life off the Kenrith as well. So this is just a very tough spot for Riley. His deck unable to close because of those early stumbles, and now we're just seeing the 4-color ramp deck just kind of trickle back into the game.
There is the escape. Ichikawa puts another land on the table. Ooh, baby, we're going to haste that up with the Kenrith. Oh yeah, let's gain 3 more life.
Yep, and can still gain life off of the Kenrith too. So the Euro's going to come in, gain some life, draw a card, no land to play. And then Kenrith's just going to hold back on defense, keep the little guys in check, and then gain 5 life.
Uro connects, Hicks to 14. And yeah, we have gain 5 life on tap here for Ichikawa. Hicks is going to flash in Brazen Borrower, draw a card.
I feel like both red mana was tapped here. I don't know if it was needed to be tapped. Because that Spikefield Hazard, like, it looks like we have 4 mana untapped right now, and that Spikefield Hazard not being able to take care of the Brazen Bar this turn is significant.
They were both spent as red mana. Innkeeper was shot down, and then haste from Kenrith to attack the Uro.
Right. I forgot one of the Innkeepers died in response from the previous Spikefield. You're right.
Let's see what Hicks wants to do. It's got to be frustrating having a full grip and still just feeling like you're behind.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the thing. I mean, but like I said, both players are just intensely resource rich. One person was able to ramp while the other person wasn't, and Riley just kind of missed some land drops early on, and it kind of snowballed from there. I mean, it looks like the Riley might still win the game, though. There's still a good chance.
Maybe was he granted for that Ember Cleave? Is there a line?
So I hope
here's granted
for Ember Cleave.
Take a look at the options. We're going to the back. There's the cleave.
Yes.
Hicks has been doing some math to this point. Here's an attack.
And with Dispute backup too, you have to imagine that this feels pretty safe if you're Riley, just going for a 2-mana Ember Cleave plus Dispute backup against a potential negate or any sort of blue interaction from the opposing side.
So I was kind of trying to math things out. I believe Ichikawa needs to block on the beast with Kenrith and gain 5 life. I believe that buys Ichikawa a turn.
Would leave him at 2 as far as my calculations are concerned.
But with that Mystical Dispute, I mean, I guess Ichikawa has a ton of lands now. We might see some huge ultimatum turn, but at least getting this Kenrith off the table, that's a big deal for Hicks.
Yeah.
So there's the block.
Plus a lot of mana. Big deal.
Gonna gain 5 life. Big hit coming in. Ichikawa to 1. Draws Felidar Retreat. That doesn't really do much here. Bunch of mana floating. Or not. I think Ichikawa was just trying to look at the mana in the cleanest way there.
Yeah.
Quick QQ in and undo.
The way those lands stack up sometimes, it's hard to tell if you have 3 islands or 4 forests or 5. So it looks like we have about 10 mana or so. Genesis Ultimatum can be cast and then Dispute played around, but will the Genesis Ultimatum be enough to keep him in the game? Is the question.
Here's Ultimatum. There is still mana to pay for a Dispute, but Ichikawa needs a pretty good Ultimatum hit here.
I think the only way that Yuki wins this game is if the Genesis Ultimatum wins the game. I don't know exactly what combination of cards need to be hit off Genesis Ultimatum. I'm sure there's a couple of redraws here and there. Omnath plus a fetch land is a pretty good start, And
no Terror of the Peaks in this build. That was the only copy of Kenrith. So here we see the hits. That's a bunch of stuff that blocks. And you know what? It's really hard to block your way out of an Ember Cleave.
Yeah. And there's the lands are kind of, one of them's entering the battlefield tapped, so it's not going to help that much. There's no Omnath, there's no Lotus Cobra, so there's no burst of mana. I do believe that this is going to be it.
The Conundrum, put it in, draws a Bone Crusher Giant. You see Uro gain 3 life, that'll go to the bin. But 4 is just not nearly enough against a 6/6 double striking Trampler. See, the Conundrum draws a card and escapes the wilds and a negate. Uro for 1 more card, life total up to 7. But not seeing anything to do about that Lovestruck Beast.
No, and even Escape to the Wilds, like, you can't really do anything off after casting it, so this game should be wrapped up. We're going to have a game 3 here between this 4-color ramp Omnath deck and Teamer Adventures.
Ichikawa going to look things over, check all the boxes. Maybe, in theory, there's a prayer if you use Bone Crusher Giant and Spikefield Hazard just to take care of all the 1/1s. But even just like the Embercleave moving over to Brazen Borrower still gets you from 7 with the Fae of Wishes there.
Or just Fae, just Fae of Wishes in there too,
yeah. Once again, we're looking at a player with 7 cards in hand, really analyzing a very complex board and not seeing an immediate way out.
You know, Hearthstone had this problem for a while. One of the reasons why I stopped playing as much as I used to is it felt like every single turn, both players had to clear the whole board and then put a threat onto the table every turn. And if you were unable to do that, that's when you lost. So every game came down to haymaker after haymaker, with both players just having just an insane amount of resources at all times. In current standard, watching Omnath and even the Adventures deck and all the ramp decks we've seen with Euro over the past 9 months or so, it just reminds me of that heavily, and I absolutely despise it.
Yeah, the game, it's really odd when every turn the play pattern is kill all your stuff, present lethal. Kill all your stuff, present lethal.
Yeah, then it's not a game. It's just a RNG generator, right? Like, you're just trying to assemble the 7-card combo win every single turn, and your opponent is just trying to do the exact same. I mean, we saw both players that entire game flush with 7 cards in hand. No person lost because they had fewer resources than the other. So there was no point in the game where anything other than resource generation mattered. And by resource generation, I specifically am referring to mana generation.
Players doing some sideboarding. Ichikawa giving things a think as we go to game number 3, where Ichikawa will be on the play. Looks like 2 Conundrums left in the deck. Still has some play against Fertile Footsteps and what have you.
I think the crux of the game there specifically was Riley holding up the Mystical Dispute for the Felidar Retreat. I think that was a really heads-up play from them. And I'm curious how this game 3 goes.
The Granted sideboard just did so much work in that game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Hicks' navigation there. Grab Dispute, leave up Dispute, grab Embercleave, get you dead in 2.
Right. And the Embercleave just presenting the lethal over multiple bodies over the course of multiple turns. It's another one of those cards where if you don't deal with it, you will die. And the fact that there's a 1-of tutor effect for it, or a 1-of tutor for in this powerful Teamer Adventures deck is really interesting and really cool.
Players underway for game number 3. Couple basics for Ichikawa. Hicks is playing a second Temple of Mystery on turn 2, doing some scrying. Hand has an Innkeeper and a Lucky Clover. Actually, 2 Lucky Clovers. Only adventure creature at this point is a Beanstalk Giant. And a scry to the bottom. Here comes the Innkeeper.
That always changes in a hurry, though, you know?
Right. Cycle of Wilt for Ichikawa. Yeah, Stomp off the top.
Yeah, Stomp off the top. Going to allow that Bone Crusher Giant to keep the Edgewall Innkeeper in check. We'll see if they want to go for it this turn or if they just want to go a little bit of Rampy Boys with an Uro. Have you noticed my cognitive effort to try to say Uro instead of Euro just for you?
I appreciate you, bud.
Because I care about you so much and your opinion of me.
Well, I was asked the question the other day on stream. Liz Lynn was in the chat, and she asked, "Who's your favorite blue-red legend?" And I said, Todd Anderson.
Anderson. I almost said the F word just now. I was gonna say Todd flipping Anderson is what I was about to say. Just that's natural. That's just all natural right there. Holy crap. I'm so glad I stopped myself. Cedric would have been so mad.
All right, big setup for Riley Hicks. We have Edgewall Innkeeper, we have Lucky Clover, everything's online. Ichikawa also cycled the Wilt. Gonna try to have to win this in a more proactive way. Lotus Cobra will help, though. Comes the Stomp on the Innkeeper. All right, what can Hicks do with this Clover? We see a Fertile Footsteps. That's good for 2 lands. Untapped, mind you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the coolest draws for me when I first played the Teamer Adventures deck a couple months back was Lucky Clover into Beanstalk Giant specifically felt just like an unfair amount of mana generation. Because the lands from Beanstalk Giant enter the battlefield untapped, the sequence of turn 2 Clover, turn 3 Beanstalk plus Stomp was just so good against the aggressive decks. And here we're just seeing exactly that. Did that target face? Oh, one did. I'm sorry. Okay.
You got to target face with the first copy. So here's what happened here. First steps finds a couple mountains, get the red mana online. You see Stomp, and you copy it. So you have to make the first copy go somewhere other than the target, because the second copy is the real Stomp on the Lotus Cobra. You want that Bone Crusher Ardent Adventure. So 2 upstairs, 2 at the Cobra.
Oh, yeah. You got to split them up. It's fine. In my brain, I was just like, oh, no, was that a miss? No. There's 2.
All right, back to Ichikawa. No Cobra to start things off, but Escape to the Wilds is going to try to find some value. See a replacement Cobra, some lands, an Uro, and a Spikefield Hazard. Going to cast Confounding Conundrum. Doesn't want to fall even further behind on a future Fertile Footsteps.
All right, you want to know something really funny and cool? How many cards are in Yuki Ichikawa's hand right now? Can you tell me? Just
2.
At a glance.
2.
All right, there are 3 zones with cards that can be cast right now. 3 zones.
The one that really gets me is that the adventure creatures just touch the Escape to the Wilds cards.
Yeah, and they're not distinguishable.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a question that you might have stumped me on. You say, can Yuki Ichikawa cast Stomp right now? The answer is no. That Bone Crusher Giant's on an adventure hanging out with the Lotus Cobra. Lotus Cobra is going to leave the adventure one way or the other. You cast it or you don't, and it goes away. The Bone Crusher Giant's going to stay there. Anyway. It's Omnath time, or not. Could be Cobra time. It's time for Ichikawa to do some big things.
Could be. The negate in hand is going to stop like a big payoff like a Genesis Ultimatum. But if it's just like Omnath Cobra into other creature stuff, the negate doesn't really protect. A Borrower can bounce. I think that Borrower is not on Adventure because I think it was from Escape to the Wild. So I'm pretty sure the Borrower can be used to bounce the Conundrum or the Omnath or something with a first trigger on the stack maybe.
Yeah, Hicks had an Escape to the Wilds of their own. Fate of Wishes, Brazen Borrower, Lucky Clover are the current selections there. So we see the Cobra off of last turn's Escape for Ichikawa. Evolving Wilds is a land hanging out over there. That can be pretty good with a Cobra. All right, there's the Wilds. Let's make a mana. A blue mana. That Uro from the Escape is going to be step 2. That one's good.
I'm still here. I just have nothing to add. Just want to
that is clear. Reasonable. Yeah, some stuff's going to happen. We'll see how we feel about it at the end of the turn, I think is about where we are here. As Uro puts in Mountain, Cobra's going to make another mana.
The only real interesting thing here is when Riley should use the Petty Theft from Brazen Bar to bounce something. The Conundrum's not really that big of a threat at the moment. The Lotus Cobra can just be recast, and most of the same stuff can be done, so it only stalls them by about 2 mana. The big thing, I think, is just trying to figure out a spot where you can get the Omnath off the battlefield before it gains 4 mana. And I think here the spot has been found. Omnath's draw a card ability trigger allows you to interact with it before the landfall stuff starts happening. Maybe that's why Omnath has the draw card on it, but you know what? Maybe just put like gain 3 life on it or something, or gain 2 life maybe instead.
Okay, so you see Omnath trying to draw a card. Petty Theft is going to be copied by Lucky Clover. Looks like we're bouncing the Cobra and the Omnath. Ichikawa is going to respond by cracking Fabled Passage. Get that Cobra mana here. Also get that life off of the Omnath. That's a little less important, though.
Yeah, thanks to Lucky Clover, you do get to bounce 2 things, and maybe that's what Rowley was waiting for, just the best double tag instead of just the best single tag.
Sure. Makes sense. See a second confounding conundrum there for Ichikawa. Is going to sandbag that Lotus Cobra. We go back to Riley Hicks. We have Lucky Clover number 2.
Yep, and then Fae of Wishes can be used as well. I believe that Fae of Wishes is not on Adventure yet, so can triple tutor from the sideboard to maybe find a nice little combination of things to potentially get him back in this game, because right now, while they still have just like a ton of cards in hand and things on Adventure or whatever, the average power level of their spells is significantly lower than that of like Omnath Genesis Ultimatum.
Four mana in the pool. Looks like Hicks is looking at Granted.
Lucky Clover should have been legendary. Changed my mind.
I will not.
It's your Lucky Clover. You can't have 2.
Yeah.
You can't have 2 Lucky Clovers.
That's messed up.
That's not how fables work. This is my 1 Lucky Clover, and the 1 is in parentheses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, when it comes to lucky artifacts and charms, you got to commit. Okay? You can't just walk around with your Rabbit's Foot and your 4-leaf Clover, right? You just be able to game the system. It's not reasonable. 3 copies of Granted. Filling up that hand, we got Primal Might, Tormod's Crypt, Mystical Dispute. Crypt, just a little cheeky answer to Urro's in the graveyard, but when you're getting 3 wishes, may as well.
Yeah, you just want to get the cheap or free things usually, and it looks like we got Mystical Dispute, Primal Might, and Tormod's Crypt, and that combination is a way for them to basically get rid of all the Urros from the graveyard. Unfortunately, there's 2 more in hand somehow, probably because every single card of the deck says draw a card on it. I'm getting mad about this. I don't know if you can tell. I'm getting mad.
No, you?
Oh, man. It's almost like there's no way to catch up when every single card replaces itself.
Let's cast an Omnath. Interesting spot for a potential dispute. You can't counter it, but you can stop too much extra stuff from going on.
You would think. I mean, in this specific scenario, the answer to that is... Sorry, the response is yes, that is true, but like... that's just mostly because Yugi just doesn't have a land somehow,
right,
in the 35 land deck or whatever.
You know,
with all those dual face cards that are
them.
land, you don't always have a land. No, but like when like 10 of your spells are dual face cards, you know, it's pretty close.
Do have them a lot of the time. Not there though. Not even off the Omnath. So it's going to be Omnath, pay for dispute, cast Lotus Cobra, back to Hicks. Let's see what these Lucky Clovers can do. Stomp. Let's stomp a bunch. Let's double stomp that Omnath. Let's stomp that Cobra. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, Lucky Clover plus any of the adventure creatures allows for some really powerful turns. I mean, a single Bone Crusher Giant killing Cobra and Omnath's pretty cool. Pretty good.
Here is an Innkeeper. Bone Crusher Giant's going to be cast from its adventure. Hicks draws a card. We go back to Ichikawa. Let's see what this Omnath can do.
Well, it's going to start by drawing a card. then a land's going to be played, and some life's going to be had, and then some cultivate's going to be had, and well, looks like Escape to the Wilds might be the play here instead. Interesting.
Some options to consider. Omnath or Escape, and Ichikawa lands on Omnath, draws a card. Ooh,
oh, weird
passage.
Who could have predicted that ever happening? Fabled Passage plus Omnath about to bury Riley Hicks, even in the face of this negate.
Yeah, let's see how far this one goes. Passage, gain 4 life, crack passage, make 4 mana. Got a couple Uros, got to cultivate, got to Escape to the Wilds. Got to respect that negate in the opposing hand, but there are options here. An attempt to escape to the Wilds.
Yeah, this one's gonna get tagged with a negate most likely. Just figuring out how to pay right now.
Looks like Ichikawa is planning on keeping a white mana in the pool, perhaps hoping to hit another Omnath and cast that.
The negate here seems pretty easy, but then when you realize that things can go horribly wrong and a Genesis Ultimatum can still resolve this turn if you counter this, things get a little scary. But seeing a fresh 7 off the top, fresh 5 off the top with an extra land drop, Escape to the Wilds is pretty terrifying by its own right.
You know, my favorite critique or comment when you go down the Omnath rabbit hole is? It's when you ask yourself, why is this card blue, red, green? You figure that out pretty easily. When you ask yourself why the card's white, and the answer might be the fact that it gains the 4th point of life. It's not the first 3. The first 3 you can get. The first 3 you can get from Uro, It's that 4th point of life. You got to pay white for that. Anyway, Escape to the Wilds does resolve a bunch of lands and a Genesis Ultimatum. That's a better one to negate, I suppose. But we'll see if Ichikawa even goes there.
If I've learned anything from Mean Girls is that Ichikawa doesn't go there.
Uro from the hand. You're going to see Omnath do some stuff.
I think this turn is mostly over. Like a Cultivate here doesn't really do much. Another Euro doesn't really do much. Like the Omnath has already gone through the whole cycle, and the Genesis Ultimatum is going to have to be safe for next turn. Maybe Riley with that negate on Genesis Ultimatum next turn, as well as a Primal Might to kill the Omnath, might actually be able to win the game over time. But the problem is, after it's all said and done, after Riley interacts favorably in a bunch of spots and has 15 cards at his disposal or whatever, Yugi Jikawa's at 37 with 2 Euros in the graveyard. Like, I don't understand. I don't know how this game actually ends. I think Ichikawa might run out of time. I think that's possibly what's going to happen to end this game.
Ichikawa is at 7 minutes. This is the last match of the round. See Primal Might taking down that Omnath. It's interesting, right? Because with how many cards are flowing, you have all these big hits off Escape to the Wild, Genesis Ultimatum hanging out over there. We see an Omnath in hand. We see some Uros in the graveyard. But on the other side of the table, we see Edgewall Innkeeper. We see multiple Lucky Clovers. Like, there's a ton of value going on here. We did see Hicks claw back from kind of a scary position using Granted for Embercleave in game number 2. I think a lot of this comes down to Ichikawa's coming turn. And we are at that turn now. That negate is still at the ready for Hicks.
Yeah, that's going to be able to contain the Genesis Ultimatum. But the Omnath and the Lotus Cobra can generate such an absurd amount of mana and draw a bunch of cards. I would not be surprised to see a second Genesis Ultimatum cast this turn, simply because of the mana generation from Cobra and Omnath.
Here is Omnath. Draw a card. It's a Triome. Lotus Cobra, gonna join the party. We have a Fabled Passage in our Escape to the Wilds selection here. Gain 4 life. Make a mana. believe we still have at least a Plains in the deck for the passage. Here's an attempt at Genesis Ultimatum. Time for that negate. That makes plenty of sense. Oh, sorry, the Plains is actually on the escape cards. Does Ichikawa have basics left? We'll find out real quick.
Yeah, I think so. The deck plays quite a few.
All right, 2 forests remain.
So an escape from Uro here could happen. A cast to Cultivate can happen. There's like a lot of little triggers and ways to use the mana.
Okay, so that land enter has made a bunch of mana. Uro will escape. There is a Triome in hand and a Cultivate in hand. Not much more in the way of action. Wilt off the top. Wonder if you might see Ichikawa hang on to that Wilt to maybe deal with Embercleave.
Maybe. Doesn't have untapped green here for it, though, because he used that to bring back the Uro. But he's at 37, so he can afford to take at least one hit from Embercleave as long as it's not attached to like a 10-10 Beanstalk Giant.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he can't. He can actually just soak a 10-10 Beanstalk Giant.
Yeah, that would be a consideration over the course of a couple turns. Yeah. We're actually just going to see Wilt on one of the Clovers. Fair enough. There's a lot of value.
This game is 100% going to end with Yuki Ichikawa running out of time. I'm calling it.
We're at a little under 5.5 minutes for Ichikawa.
Unless a Genesis Ultimatum is drawn next turn and it wins the game on the spot. I'm calling it right now. Riley Hicks on clock.
5 minutes just feels like a lot of time to me. I finished most of my matches in 5 minutes.
Yeah, but you also play Lava Dart.
Yeah, well, you know, what can I say?
Oh, wait, no, these decks also play Lava Dart. So,
yeah. That's a point. Point Ichikawa.
Checkmate.
All right, granted. Let's grab more of these sideboard cards. There's an Ugin over there. That one's interesting. What are we looking at, though? We get 2. Got that negate. That one's good. Cover that ultimatum. Rather, the potential for an ultimatum.
The bubble snare. Love it.
Huh. Tap down Uro? Is that what we're up to?
I hope so. I hope it's tap down Uro. That's nuts. That's so cool. Me and you talked about Bubble Snare when we were doing our mini set review for like constructed playable stuff from the new set, and you popping up on Bubble Snare was like, oh, and then after reading, I was like, oh yeah, this card's rad.
Yeah, I dig Bubble Snare. It's a nice one.
Oh no, Riley accidentally floated too much mana and was unable to leave up negate. Oh, they're not going to get punished for it, though. That's pretty rad.
How many cards are still in the bin for this Uro?
Not enough, because it's not highlighted.
Not highlighted. Cultivate can go there real easy, though.
That's true, except there's only one basic left. Does that matter?
Sure, there's a lot of mana, though. Both those creatures are gone. Well, I mean, Omnath's not there. That makes this Uro escaping less of a thing, but it is escaping.
True.
Might be a big look for Ichikawa here. Do we have an ultimatum? We don't. We have a Fabled Passage. That's no good. That's garbage.
Remember when I said that, even if he counters the Genesis Ultimatum and he deals with the Omnath and blah, 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 and I was like, he still has to beat 2 Euros from the graveyard, and I have no idea how they do that. I think I think that this is it. I think the Lucky Clovers and the Fae of Wishes and the Escape to the Wilds, this might actually just be enough to beat Escaped Euros.
And that's the phase of the game we're at, and this Escape to the Wilds makes things look pretty promising. You see another Innkeeper, you see a bunch of adventure creatures there. Borrower, Bone Crusher, Lovestruck Beast. Gruul Ultimatum, if you will. Escape to the Wilds. I take your silence to be that you won't.
I don't know, dude. What do you want?
You're not in on Gruul Ultimatum.
No. I'm not. Sorry. I don't know what you want from me. Anyway, the Edgewall keepers here, they're gonna provide like more cards, I guess. But like, so there's so many. Like, what? How do you make the decision when it's between one of 14 iterations of different cards or whatever? Like, I'm just information overloaded right now. My brain is frazzled. I'm sorry.
Riley Hicks has actually fallen behind on clock. You know, you're talking about Ichikawa maybe timing out, but
the secret boon of running out of stuff to do is you don't time out because you don't have anything to do with your mana.
Exactly. And you talk about information overload, that becomes a problem when time is a factor. And Ichikawa's at 40. I mean, Embercleave can make short work of that. You see the Beanstalk Giant. It's just waiting. It's itching to pick up a cleave.
Yeah, another
and Ichikawa's hand is garbage. Bone Crusher Giant rumbling in. Do I have a block?
Of these two cultivates and the Fabled Passage, there's only one basic land left in the deck for any of them to do anything. So the Lotus Cobra is a lot worse here. And if the Fabled Passage does get a land, the cultivates are actually dead cards. So tough spot.
Everybody blocks. Bone Crusher actually chooses to trade with the Fae of Wishes. Now we see Uro showing up once more. There's an ultimatum, but now we are looking at that face-up counterspell.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that negates face-up still, is it? Maybe it is. I know the Mystical Dispute was seen earlier because I think it was grabbed off of the... Maybe it is. It's impossible to tell.
I think, yeah, I see this negate on Ichikawa's screen. I believe that's the same one that was wished for.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It is known.
Yeah, I can't see the eyeball icon up on Hicks' side of things, but I do see the card on Ichikawa's screen.
Right. You get it.
Speaking of eyeball icons, it's time for everyone's favorite animation. Uro escaping.
Your Uro with googly eyes is so good, dude.
Here it comes. Just jamming these cards in the graveyard. Yeah, you're in my cultivate, fail to find. And now Ichikawa ended the turn behind on clock. It's time for Hicks to fall behind again as some stomps are going to go off. Both players at about 3 minutes. Can one of them finish on time? Second Lucky Clover. Heart's Desire. Let's make some 1/1s. 3 of them. You got to deal 46 damage, Riley Hicks. You are facing down one ugly life-gaining monster.
You know, it's funny. I called the game ending on time, but I called it wrong. The person who did more things is going to lose.
All right, so here's the attempt on that ultimatum, but Ichikawa picked up negate, so we have a counter war here, and Ichikawa has plenty of mana to fight over a dispute. So at long last, we actually see ultimatum resolves, and there's Kenrith. I don't know if this game's ending on time, Todd.
Okay, no, you're right.
We can haste everything up. We get activations for multiple pumps this turn. Ichikawa is going to take a look at Escape to the Wilds, though, generate even more value. Ooh, does a Felidar retreat?
Yeah, it's not going to be that good this turn because he's basically out of juice mana-wise. I think the Crack Crown pathway can come down, but all the other lands enter the battlefield tapped. So Kenrith here probably just going to chill for a turn, and then next turn they're going to go ballistic with the Felidar retreat, assuming that there's no win coming from the other side at 49 life. I don't think that's happening.
Kenrith just hanging tight. Wow. Uro rumbles in, trades with a beast and a token.
Wow. Is Spiked Hazard's an instant, right? That could have been cast there to actually save the Uro?
I think that Ichikawa is really feeling the pressure of time as you see the clock fall to 2 minutes here.
Yep.
You see the Hazard goes for Innkeeper. Just doesn't want to somehow lose this 49 life and extra cards is a way that can happen. I think that the Uro is a little bit whatever.
Sure. Uro also creates a trigger whenever it attacks. So that was probably some consideration as well.
Asking you to put lands on the table. Here's some Bone Crusher Giant action. Another hazard. Take care of the other innkeeper. Now Riley Hicks has fallen at below 2 minutes.
Well, the Bone Crusher Giant killing the Kinrith means that I don't believe Ichikawa can win the game anymore in the 2-minute time frame. Like, if anything can, it's Feldar Retreat. Like, Feldar Retreat does scale really well, but when most of the lands that are in the deck are currently on the battlefield, yeah, I think the game's just over.
Yeah.
It's just going to run out of time.
Backs it up. Yeah, time's a consideration, but I think that what you were saying about the retreat is actually really resonant. I think that's why